Overgeneralize. Today it's just the three of us. We don't have any special guests, but more are coming. Um, Today we're going to talk about Pecs and AAC. I feel like, we always talk about kind of our verbal kids or kind of breeze over like Pecs and AAC, like specifically. And it's something that I didn't fully experience and work with until I was actually at my second ABA company. All of my clients at the company, we all work together. We're all either verbal or, we were doing sign language or whatever. So I think talking about Pecs and AAC is important. We were just discussing actually different goals that are kind of challenging to program when dealing with Pecs and AAC and not verbal language. But I guess let's back up a little and I know Pecs is picture exchange
communication system.
Yeah, listen, acronyms, they hurt my brain. And then AAC is a device, but what is it actually?
That's it. It's just a device. Augmentative. It is augmentative and alternative communication.
There we go. It's usually the iPad that like talks for the client.
There's so many different types out there. There's like eye gaze ones, which are really cool. There's obviously the touch, the buttons.
Yeah.
There's definitely more other ones out there that we probably have seen, but it's
absolutely
not.
But yeah, so like Pecs is usually, I feel like, more handmade, the binder, little icons. The AAC is more of technology.
Surprisingly, I don't have any of those little pictures on my desk. That's what I was just looking for.
I don't have everything is in my office. Hold on 1 second. I hear a cat.
You hear
oh, kitty.
Anywho's.
Is she gonna come back? Yes, she's gonna come back with a cat. All right.
I have a cat. Here she is. She was lost.
But yeah, I used to come home. I know like the Pecs icons, I feel like I came home and they went through my wash every other day. I definitely always had something in, because I know for me, like something would be unavailable to the client and I would just rip it off and throw it in my pocket. So like they couldn't even go searching for it. Out of sight, out of mind. And yeah, so I washed plenty of Pecs and that was fun. But I guess let's, like, Erica, Ann, what is your experience with Pecs AAC? Let's start there.
Do you want to start, Ann, or do you want me to?
Is Ann muted? We can't hear Ann now.
Did you walked too far away from your computer and we lost your voice? Nope. Okay, well, while Ann's figuring it out, I'm gonna I guess I'll just go ahead and try.
Erica's gonna answer that one.
Nope, still nothing. Well, anyways, so I personally have very minimal experience with Pecs and have more experience with AAC devices. I will say that for any sort of pictures, I usually create little baby icons, not baby icons, but like, I don't know, like maybe 2x2 squares or even like 3x3, something like that.
If you think this is a 2x2 square, you are wrong.
Well, okay, like something in a square, like that is big enough for
all right, move on. Stop with the hand gestures because that's not even a square. Okay.
This is a circle. This is a something.
Circle. Move on.
Okay. Nope, we still cannot hear you, Ann. So yes. So I'll make like little icons for, I can't not use my hands. I'm sorry. I'll sit on them. All right. Incompatible behaviors. Cannot use hands if I'm sitting on them. So yes, I have done like, pictures of a toilet sitting like for just around the house for kiddos to kind of, yeah, that's fine. Go for it, Ann. Ann's gonna leave and then come back. But yeah, I've used pictures for kids to kind of just touch around the house. But other than that, when it comes to like picture exchange, really not something that I've used. I wasn't really trained on it. I did take a Pecs course, CEU, so I know how to do it. I just don't like to kind of overstep on any sort of like speech. So I usually wait for speech to kind of make their she's back, make their judgment first and decisions before I do anything. But like I said, AAC devices, I've been working with them since probably like 2017-ish.
Yeah, you had a few clients even in the social skills group that had
Yeah, like I'm thinking off the
the
top of my head, like I had one kiddo that we did a lot of like intensive manned training with the device specifically. And then once obviously they learned how to communicate, they really diminished a lot of behaviors and started to understand what their device worked, like how it worked.
I know you had mentioned speech too, and I feel like this is a hard topic for many reasons, as I mentioned before about like goal making and everything, but also because like Pecs and AAC does overlap with speech. It's, it's their communication system, it's their voice, it's, all of the above. But we work so heavily on like man training, and a lot of the time, if we could increase mans, a lot of the behaviors then decrease. So it's a bunch of, this one's like a very on the fence of like a couple different areas and topics.
I usually wait to like have the speech pathologist make the decisions first, just because, like I said, I don't want to like overstep on anyone. And I don't know, Anne, do you have a different experience? I'm hoping your microphone's working now.
Yeah, I have experience with both. I don't know if I'll repeat much of what Erica has said. But I did take like an informal Pecs training at the company that we worked at. And it went through like the first, like I remember having like a packet of like the slideshow, like with the notes of like the different phases, because Pecs, there are phases. You can't just throw a binder of pictures at a kid and be like, here you go, here are your new words. This is how you're going to communicate. You have to do it very strategically. And sometimes I have seen kids skip phases. So like the first phase, you just have one picture and you're just teaching them like picking it up and handing it to you. And then the next phase, you have the neutral picture with it. I think that's the next phase. I could be mixing that up. Just to teach them to differentiate between the pictures. And then sometimes they'll skip and like they'll start just going through the binder and looking for what they want. Like as soon as it clicks, like, oh, this is how I get what I want. And then, you work on the distance with the Pecs. You could have it like 3 feet away, 5 feet away in a different room. And then so that the client or whoever you're working with learns like, oh, I have to go find it. And then I have to go find the person to tell them what I want. Now with AAC, from what I understand, there aren't really phases. I think it depends on the programming too, because there's a bunch of different programs. And some you can control how many pictures there is on the screen and the size. So like if there are less pictures, like with Prolo Quo to Go, you can change like 3 by 3 so that there's only 9 pictures and they're larger. But the other one, which I can never remember the name, but it's what I think I see. What is it?
Touch chat.
That's the one I've been the most familiar with.
But you can adjust touch chat too.
I don't know if that's what it's called, but it's like what I see more in schools, and you can't really mess with the layout. Like you can't reorganize stuff. Like there's folders and it's already set up, and like it some kind of doesn't make sense. Like if you have like prepositions and colors in a different folder, you can add like custom pictures of like people.
I don't know what it's called, but I know exactly what you're talking about. You're right. A lot of like the tablets and stuff that came from school districts for our kiddos, it was that way. And you're right, some of the folders didn't make any sense at all. And you're just like,
yeah.
where
and you would
is
have to
this
go into
letter?
like folder. Yeah, you would have to go in several folders to find one picture. But from what I've seen, like the kids, like they can do it. They, you know, sometimes you need to just model it for them and kind of do like a task analysis to break it down if it's several folders that they need to go into.
Yeah.
But then like, yeah, I guess it just all depends on the kid that you're with, and teaching that. And then like for my experience, like the schools, like the school speech pathologist will prescribe the device, and then you know that goes back and forth. That should be sent home with the kid and like be used at home too. Like just because they're not in school anymore doesn't mean that they shouldn't be using it. Like it's expected to carry that over at home.
So that's a really good point. And I feel like I've seen a lot of cons with that, is like a lot of, especially the second company that I was most recently at, like we saw a lot of the time the intermediate unit or the school district prescribes the device. And so it's technically their device, like they own it, but it's assigned to our client or whatever. And like the intermediate unit will go on break for 3 weeks, or the, you know, school closes for summer or something happens and it's like a lag to replace it. And then our kids have no way of communicating. All of a sudden their voice is gone. Their behaviors spike through the roof because they have no idea what to do or how to communicate and what's going on. So I think that's a major con. Another major con that I've seen is the BCBA on the case. All of a sudden, so I worked with, especially in the clinic setting, I worked with a lot of kiddos that were coming in brand new, either just got a diagnosis, just, you know, this is their first ABA services, like very, very beginning. So a lot of our BCBAs were also newer and they didn't know how to program for AAC. They've never seen I guess they've seen AAC devices, but they've never been like on the BCBA side of it. So like I witnessed a few scenarios that all of a sudden, you know, intermediate unit sends this device and is like, please use it to help with man training. And the BCBA has no idea how to program for it. And now everyone's doing it differently. Intermediate units running it one way. The BCBA is running it another way. The BCBA is trying to describe how to do it to the RBT. The RBT is now confused, and it honestly breaks down. And this kid has zero idea how to use this device. It turns into pressing buttons.
That's why
it can become aversive.
Yeah.
To the kid,
and
like this is too hard. I'm not doing it.
And the one case that I am like thinking of specifically, it became like this kiddo really could have succeeded with an AC, but there was no collaboration. I mean, there was a lot of things wrong with this case, and I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but it ended up being there was no collaboration. The BCBA didn't know how to program for it, and the whole system broke down. And this kiddo who was doing so well with the Pecs book now had increasing behaviors again, and we basically started all the way over. When for us, we should have just used in my opinion, we should have just used the Pecs book, just continued with that until everyone was able to get on the same page, or he was more proficient, at least at the IU with it, and kind of let them take the lead there. And then once he was a little bit more proficient, moving it across settings. And then I
think you bring up a good point with like, if they were already using a Pecs book, why did they? I mean, I'm sure they have a reason, but like, why did they move to AAC? Like, if they're already proficient in one, why are you going to teach a whole? It's like teaching a second language. Like, that's how I think of it.
Yeah, and I feel like there is points in times. Like, I also have seen that one of the girls was so proficient, she could scan, she'd go find it, she'd, you know, whole thing, and she would have really benefited from transitioning to an AAC, that she could type and like, you know, use more words, because how many times we lost icons in her book and she then couldn't find it, and then she's bringing us whatever. But you're right, in certain cases that works great. In other cases, let's just stick with what we know, especially for like the younger kiddos. At least they can communicate with us. Let's just just hang out there.
I think that sometimes what happens though is that, Pecs, you have to constantly be making different pictures, right, to add to the repertoire. Whereas with a device, it's so much easier to just press a button, snap a pic, and put it in, right? And I think that for me, what I've seen at least is if a child did have Pecs and they were getting an AAC device, which, like I said, I very minimally worked with kids with Pecs. We see that like it's usually a parent preference where it's like, oh, this was an option. This is something that we can do. And instead of us continually adding pictures and pictures and pictures, parents would prefer to wait for an AAC device over, working on pictures, like the PEC system. So that's why personally, like I haven't really had much experience with it because a lot of times I see the families are like, no, I'd rather a device.
You're absolutely, yeah. That's always, I feel like that's 100% of the cases I've seen of the switch to AAC has been for that because the parents just
well,
like,
I think,
an option.
Yeah, and I think like it looks more normal because
that's
kids
a good point.
You also
have
iPads. Pictures. Yeah.
I used air quotes for those who are not watching for normal because if you think about any neurotypical kid who can verbalize or vocalize or can speak just like we're speaking right now, they have an iPad. It doesn't look, they're not sticking out, whereas if you have a PEX book, it's like, oh, what is that, what are they carrying around? Although like there have been times where I've seen like other kids be like, why do they have that, why are they talking like that? And it's like you just explain like, oh, that's how they speak, that's how they communicate with us, and then that's that. I mean, it's also okay for others to be curious about it, because if you really look at it, and if it's on, if they don't have access to like YouTube or whatever, I think kids are more inclined to be like, oh, they have an iPad, but they're not doing what I would do on it,
Yeah. Erica, did you have something else to say?
Yeah, I was just gonna say in general, like it's yes, with the normalcy, right? Like of using the device, because it definitely takes away from making the child stand out more. And that's something that we want to make sure that like, they're blending in with the rest of their peers as much as possible to not have them discern too much and all that stuff. But and socially like appropriateness, right? When it comes to these PEC books, though, how many times have you guys lost the pictures?
I know. That's what I just said.
Besides,
how many PECs we had to? It got to the point with a lot of, well, just across the clinic in general, we literally made a PECs library for like all the toys in the clinic and like commonly used words or whatever. So like it was so easy that if you lost it, you could just go into the office and like grab an alternative one, and like that was somebody's assignment almost every week, was just like make backups.
Refill.
You're absolutely correct. That was probably the biggest con. And depending on if you like get the actual PEX binder or you just get a cheapo binder, the binders fall apart real quickly. I think that's another
but the iPads can also break. Like I've had that happen where the kid has broken the iPad, like the screen.
They're out a voice. It's dead.
Yeah. So then, and I've also had it where like there's a wait list to get an AAC device. So then what do you do?
Pennsylvania's, to even get evaluated for an AAC, their wait list is absolutely ridiculous. I have heard 6 months to a year.
Yeah, it's not just there. And like I've asked teachers like, okay, well, if an AAC device isn't available, are you familiar with PECs? And guess what? The answer that they've given me is nope, I don't know what that is. And it's like, okay, like I'm not sure if we're just getting away from PECs in general, but we need a backup. Like we can't just be like, oh, there's no iPad, we're just going to deal with it. Like, no, we need to think of some sort of replacement behavior so they can get their needs met. Like this isn't fair to them.
Well, and I also noticed down here, at least, like a lot of families are requesting, so they can ask their speech pathologist that's insurance-based, not just school-based, for a referral if they feel like it's necessary. And then there's so many companies that will give you a device. So like I have been just getting so many different so much, I feel like it's a little bit easier in general than people really make it out to seem, because you can request a trial device, and then once you do the trial device and see how that works with your kiddo, then you send it back. So like that's the unfortunate part, is like you try it out, it works, it doesn't work, but no matter what, like the kiddo likes it or they don't like it, and the trial, ends, and then they don't have anything. So then it ends up becoming like a cyclical thing where you're like, okay, well, now I have to wait another couple months. I think the max one of my kids had waited was like 6 to 8 months, but the least amount of time a kiddo waited maybe was like 2 months. So it depends on where you go, what company you go through. But I think a parent said like so both of her kids have devices, and she was saying, yeah, one of them we had to wait a lot longer. I think it was 6 to 8 months, something like that. Wow. The other one, she waited like almost no time. So I thought that was really interesting, because one needed it a lot more, I would say, than the other one. Not to say that they don't need them at all, but I think like the need was a little bit higher for the one that waited a lot longer, unfortunately. But we're making progress. That's all that matters at this point anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we should I'm gonna switch gears a little bit, and like we kind of talked in the beginning about like goal making. So Erica brought to our attention this week about, well, you could correct me, I'm gonna butcher this a little bit, but just tacting on an AAC device. Is it matching? Is it tacting? Is it intraverbals? Like, honestly, I have heard it be kind of all three. It depends on how you're running the program, what the picture looks like, what are you asking, like, are you pointing to an object, all that good stuff. So Erica got a handy dandy book, and it gave her the answer.
Her handy dandy notebook.
Just call me Blue.
So yeah, Erica, can you like explain your exact question again, and then what the book said?
So yes, so I have been working with a lot of kiddos down here with AAC devices, and before I acquired them, BCBAs were using the word tacting. And I was like, there's not an ability for this kiddo to be tacting. Tacting is, you're vocally asking them a question of what is it? And then they're vocally responding. I feel like that's how we've always learned it, right? They're evoking the same response how you have presented it, right? So I guess like the SD kind of has to match the verbal operand, right? That's basically how I understand it. Well, I also was told that, and Angie and I have also talked about this. We're convinced, we were told by at least one person in our work life or work whatever experience, there we go, in our experience so far, that it is non-identical matching. So you take the picture, you say, what is it? And they have to find it on there. Could also be receptive identification, right? Like you're essentially doing the same thing, right? You're finding it in the array. But the reason why this has come up is because I had explained this to a student who I had come out with, do an assessment, and I explained it to them. I was like, listen, the goal would not be tacting, it would be non-identical matching. Well, then she comes back with a question of like, can you please give me more research or something along the lines of like, to back up this information, because it's really interesting. I've never heard this before. Well, I presented to G and Anne, and this is where we are now. So I asked Janae, who had been on previously, and she also gave me the same response that is in this book. So what I have learned is collaboration 110%. Always ask your peers, because you're always going to find the answer somewhere, somehow, whether it's from your peer and an additional literature, or it's like additional literature or just your peer. So long story short, the answer is it's tacting. Janae, you were right. So in this book, it's called AAC Visualized. We previously had talked about ABA generalized. I don't know why my brain, or not.
No, ABA visualized.
My brain visualized. I'm doing great, guys. So ABA Visualized, I had previously shown this book. We do not get anything for we're not sponsors of them. We're just absolute lovers of these books. And I was trying to show a parent, the book the other day, and I saw on Amazon AAC visual ads. Immediately, I ordered this book. So in this book, it helped kind of solidify the response that we were looking for, or not response that we were looking for. I was hoping to be affirmed, but I was not. So anyways, it says labeling right here. It says tacting.
Labeling is tacting. If you're
Get on with it, because we have one more topic and we're running out of time. Crazy.
Sorry, I'm trying to make sure I'm explaining this. So basically what it's saying is, tacting is your five senses, but at the same time, it's still using some way to label something, right? So like we pulled up a picture, we're asking, hey, what is it? They still are using their way of voice, their communication to label, to say what this thing is. So I will be going through all of my goals and fixing it to say tacting again, or labeling at least, because now I feel like a silly person.
Follow up, and I'm gonna, sorry, G, but if you want to make a matching goal, I guess it wouldn't be matching. Yeah,
it's not picture to picture.
Lowering my hand now.
see, my brain was like, okay. And I think the way it was explained to us was it's picture to picture, right? Like that's what it is. And I couldn't like push away from that. I was like, okay, that's what makes sense to me. And when I was explaining it to all my RBTs, they're like, yeah, that makes the most sense. It is picture to picture.
Yeah.
Nope. It's still the SD itself which is your discriminating stimulus, right? Your stimulus discriminating. What's the word I'm looking for? What's the SD?
SD?
SD is your discriminative stimulus?
Oh my God. I can't say it. Can't. Just Google it. SD.
We're doing
discriminative stimulus.
That's what I think it is. I'm pretty sure that's what it's.
It's a stimulus. It doesn't matter. It's a stimulus. Keep going.
So when you say what is it, you're still, using the vocal. That's your SD. And then obviously always remember to provide specific praise. So if you're one of these people that has, like me and Anne, who have written goals to reflect labeling.
Sorry, I Googled SD and it comes up as standard deviation, and that is not the SD that we're talking about.
Well, an SD shows that there's reinforcement available, whereas like if you had an S delta, that's showing that reinforcement is not available. So anyways, we are not getting into that. We are still on AACs and Pecs. So
we're fine.
Long story short, I was wrong once again. It's fine. But this book is lovely. I feel like it's going to help me learn a lot more.
Stimulus.
I was right. Discriminative stimulus, but I just can't say it right. Doesn't it sound weird when it comes out of my mouth? Tell me it doesn't sound weird. But anyways, I think we should do a poll still on our story or something. That said, like asks if anyone else has encountered that of like, what would you have called it before we, discussed this on this episode. So.
Oh yeah. Well, and that book is created by a BCBA and a speech pathologist, right? So.
What's an NBCT?
All right, can we stop naming acronyms that we don't know what they are? We have to Google them.
Hey, all right. We knew what SD was. We just couldn't say it right. And it also sounds weird when I say it. So
wrap this up.
Mindfulness-based cognitive therapy?
That?
No, N as in Nan. Yeah. NBCT. But then there is also a speech.
I'm about to do the conclusion.
National Board Certification of what?
What's the T?
Therapy.
We're gonna have a lot of things to post on our story. This episode was all over the place.
Okay. Teacher, maybe?
Maybe.
While you guys discuss this, I'll do the rest.
They both have a Master of Education, so it's fine. Anyways, I'm enjoying making G a little annoyed. I don't know about you, Anne. This is great. I'm having a great
time. No, but let's wrap things up.
A teacher.
We're gonna wrap
keep all of this in.
Today.
Keep all of this in.
I'm going to.
We are going to wrap this up. Definitely more to talk about. I think that we can talk about this, in further extent of goal making and goal writing, and maybe how to even overcome the cons that we discussed throughout of like if the device breaks or if you're losing pecs all the time or anything like that.
Or a kiddo is stimming on it. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. We definitely want to talk about like if a kid is stimming on their AAC, but I think that could also go on a very long tangent because I think that's a big problem that a lot of people have and a lot of times why parents are hesitant to go AAC route. So that's topic for another episode. But thank everyone for listening today to ABA Generalized. We are going to put out a post, but September we are going to take the month off. We will not be posting new content, at least episode wise. We'll probably do a lot of social media involvement. We are going to revamp some things and we're really excited for what October will hold for us. But in the meantime, if you have any questions or you want to be on, email us at aba.generalized.podcast@gmail.com. And I almost really screwed that up. Or you can reach out to us on Instagram at ABA Generalize the Pod. Watch us on YouTube and rate, review, and subscribe. Peace out.
Next time. ABA Generalize the Podcast is not providing professional advice. Please seek a professional in your area for specific advice and support.